Hello everyone, I'm Morgan and today I wanted to talk to you about my favorite books I read in 2019. I tried to make this a top 10 but I really couldn't, so I have 13 books to talk about today. As usual, I will go from the one I like the least to the one I like the most, but know that all of these were my favorites, so they're all worth the read. And yeah, that's all I have to say right now. And these books are all books that I read in 2019, not books that came out in 2019. And we can go. So the first book I want to talk about is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This is a YA contemporary, pretty hard-hitting, about a girl who has to go through grief because her grandpa died and she just up and left without telling anyone after that, and she went to college. And we follow her when her best friend comes to visit her after that because she wants to know what happened with her. And it's also a female romance, which is really nice, and the writing was just really great. And I listened to this one audiobook and I would recommend the audiobook. The narrator was just really good, which is why I haven't felt the need to buy a physical copy for now, but I might do that still because I just really like the audiobook, and I think that if I ever want to reread it I will do that again. But yeah, I really like this book, and I'm thinking of reading other books by Nina LaCour as I really like her writing. The next book is Dress Codes for Small Towns by Courtney Stevens, and I actually own this one. It's right here. This is about a girl who has a lot of best friends. They're a great friend group, and also there's bisexual rep in this, which I really enjoyed as I am bisexual. And I thought it was really well done because you can really see how she struggles with being bisexual. And yeah, it was just really well handled, and also the small town feel in this book was just really nice, and all the characters were very well developed, and I just really enjoyed it. And yeah, the writing was pretty simple but good, and it made me cry. And there's also a best friends to lovers thing going on in it, which was really nice. I always like that because I think that if you love someone, then you should be able to be friends with them. It doesn't mean that you have to be friends with them before actually having a relationship, but it's also nice. So yeah, I think this book was amazing. And next book is one that you've probably heard about many times. It is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I still hadn't read this book, but I finally did in the beginning of 2019, and I saw how great this was. If you don't know, so this follows the Black Lives Matter movement, kind of. It's about a girl star that grows up in this neighborhood where a lot of things have been happening, and she sees one of her friends getting murdered when she's a kid, but that's not what it's about. It's about later when she's a teenager, so in the book, and she is in a car with one of her friends who is also black, and he gets shot right in front of her. And she knows he didn't really do anything to deserve it, but not everyone believes that, and obviously the police officer who shot her friend doesn't want to say that it was for no reason. So it becomes a whole thing. There are a lot of demonstrations that start after that, and she gets in the middle of it, basically. She doesn't really mean to be in the middle, but she's just there, you know. And I really like this book for that representation, but also because of the parents that I thought were really well done. They were there for one, which is something that is quite uncommon actually in YA, because I don't know, it makes sense in my way that you would see the parents because obviously they're usually teenagers, so they're not living alone. But in a lot of books, you don't actually see them that much, and if they are there, they're just there to be like something to respond to, you know, like they're horrible people, so they just want to go out and that kind of thing. But here they were just there for her, and she also had a brother, I think, which was really nice, who was really nice, and just yeah, although the cast was just great, and the writing I liked in the story, and I cried in many places, and yeah, it was great. Next is Hunger by Roxane Gay. I listened to this one audiobook as well because it's narrated by Roxane Gay herself, which was really good because this book is actually a memoir. It's a memoir about her body, about hunger, but not only, because she also talks about being raped when she was a kid, which I thought was horrible and but also great. Like the way she told it made it very hard hitting, and it really did something for me. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everyone because I said it was really hard to read, but I was really interested in the way she saw things and how she talked about fat phobia as well, because though I'm not exactly thin, I've never been like fat exactly, I'm not obese, so to see the perspective of someone who is and how she feels about people looking at her and that kind of thing, and how she feels about her body is something that was really interesting to see, and I just thought it was amazing. And as I said, hearing it from her made it even better, and I would totally recommend listening to the audiobook. Like it was perfection, and yeah, just great. Like all of these books. Next is Glamour Emma by Bret Easton Ellis, and this is one weird book. So in it we follow Victor Ward, who works for a magazine, I think it was, and basically for about 100 pages I did not like this book at all because Victor is basically the biggest asshole you'll ever see. He just spends his time name dropping all the time, going to parties and just being an asshole all over, and it was not interesting at all for a while. But at some point you start getting some weird things that happen. You're not really sure, you know, that something is weird, but you feel it, you know? Like, I don't know, there are some books like that when they're just little things that are weird, and so you're not sure, you're wondering if you are crazy or if there are actually weird things going on. And so I actually kept going, but I was hating my way through this book, and it was actually totally worth it. You spend a lot of time not knowing what's happening, and there's that more and more things start happening that are very weird, and Victor is still a horrible character, but he's also kind of interesting to read from. And this book is actually kind of made to be horrible to read because he's just depicting how people are in that kind of environment, people who work in magazines and that kind of thing in New York, who are always name dropping and brand shopping as well, because he's talking about the brands that he was buying and the places he was going, you know, all that stuff. And yeah, I'm really happy that it was actually worth the read in the end, because like I said, it was very, very horrible, and he's never really redeemed, Victor. He gets better by the end, but he's still pretty terrible. But it all makes sense in the end, so at least there's that. But yeah, I don't know. I would recommend this book to most people, to be honest, because you need to know that. I mean, I didn't know that it would actually be worth it, so now, I mean, knowing that, it's easier to read the book because you know that something's going to happen eventually, but I didn't. I was just like, why am I reading this? And it was really an experience, but it was worth it. Next is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This one I loved so much. It is about this girl who is in her last year of high school, and she has always worked very hard to get amazing grades, and she's always wanted to go to, I don't know if it was Oxford or Cambridge or like one of these big colleges in the UK. And in the end, when she gets there, when she goes to her interview and everything, she starts questioning everything, and she also meets this guy, Alit, who makes a podcast that she's been a fan of for years called Radio Silence, and they start being friends, and they've actually lived in the same street for since they were kids, but they never talked that much. She was actually really close to her sister, or his sister, sorry, when they were kids. But then his sister actually left the house with no explanation, and she always wondered what happened with that. And she's just discovering everything, you know, and questioning everything herself, what she wants to do. And also in it, the parents were, some were great and some were terrible. Ellie's parents are pretty terrible, and Francis's mother was really nice, and she was really helping her to find herself, and that was really nice to see. And yeah, she was just a great character, and as well as Francis, obviously, and Alid, they were just amazing. And I love the question of you know, going to university versus following your passion, because she was actually she loves to draw, so she loves arts and that kind of thing, but she's always been really good at academics as well, so she never knew if she should follow her passion or go to university, as she's always thought she should. And that those thoughts were just really relatable, and I've actually always wondered if I should do something else than university, though I've always been great at it and I love sciences. I'm a physics major and I'm probably going to graduate soon, but I've always wondered if I should have done something else, and I just thought it was an interesting topic, and yeah, it made me think a lot, so that's always a sign of a good book. The next book I loved was An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This is the first book in a duology, and it follows this girl who goes out at 3 a.m. after she's done work, and she sees this big thing that she thinks looks like an art installation. He kind of looks like a robot, you know, he's very tall, and she thinks it's a nice art installation and that is beautiful. So she calls her friend at 3 a.m. and asks him to come with a camera so that she can film it and put it on YouTube. So that's what she does. And when she wakes up at like 8 or whatever after that, this video has gone viral and she becomes this huge thing in the whole world. And apparently these things that she saw and that she filmed have been appearing all over the world at the same time with no explanation whatsoever. No one saw how they got there, and soon they start thinking that this might be an alien thing, and everything starts from there. It really explores how celebrity affects people, and her in particular, how she reacts to things with her friends and with just her personality, basically, and that was really well done. Obviously, this was written by Hank Green, who is one of the first people who had a channel on YouTube that was very, very popular, so he knows what he's talking about. And also, obviously, there were some science fiction elements, which I always enjoy, but they weren't that important. I mean, it's still part of the plot, obviously, but the focus is mostly on the contemporary side of the book, and I just really like that. It was just a really great book, and I was very surprised by how much I liked it, to be honest. I had heard pretty good things about it, but I did I think I would for some reason, but I did. I really did. And again, this one I listened to an audiobook, and the audiobook narrator was just perfect. So I'm gonna be listening to the second one, probably an audiobook too. It's coming out in July, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm really excited for the sequel. Next is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. This is a book where we follow Ed Kennedy. He goes to this bank with his friends, and the bank is actually robbed, and he manages to catch the robber, so he becomes this huge hero in the city. And after that, he goes home and he finds this ace play card where some times are written as well as addresses. And so he goes to those places at those times, and he sees people that actually need help, and he understands that he's supposed to help them, and that's why he got this ace card. And so it all starts from there. I loved how mysterious this book was. I just really wanted to know what was happening all throughout, and I loved Marcus Zusak's writing as well. It was kind of cliche in parts because it made me think of some movies like this that have things that are very typical to them, but this was in book form. But I like those movies, and so I like this book as well. I thought it was really good, and I like the character of Ed Kennedy. He's just this guy who's 19 and has always been driving taxis, actually, and he hasn't been doing much of his life, but after everything that happens, he actually changes a lot, and it's great to see this much development in a character and just in a person, because you know he feels very real. And again, he had a great group of friends, which is nice to see. I always like that. And he actually tries to help them and help his family after he changes. It's not always easy for him to change, but he really tries to do it, and that's nice to see, you know. I like books that are hopeful. I know not everyone does, and the ending also was really hopeful, which I enjoy. But yeah, I just really like this book. Next is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. I could have mentioned really any book in this series because I love every single one of them. I read them all in 2019 on audiobook, and also I would recommend the audiobooks because Kevin, our Fried narrator, has just a great voice. And so this series follows Murderbot as he comes himself. He is a robot that takes care of security for humans. So he gets employed by humans to take care of their security, and in the first book he's employed by a bunch of scientists that are doing experiments on this planet. And it's all very interesting. Like, the plot is really cool, but also it's all about characters, like most of the books that I like. So Murderbot is just a great character to follow. He is very funny, and he loves watching TV shows, serials, and he always says that he is just really annoyed by how humans act, and it's all very funny. He just feels so human, though he's a robot, and I think that's the strong point in this series. But also I love the next books because we meet other characters that he becomes friends with, other robots, and it's just so nice to see. But yeah, just maybe the first one is just a little bit better because you see more, like, I don't know, it's more of a whole, when the others just go by very quickly. They're all novellas, so obviously they're short, but I love these books. Next is White Tears by Harry Kunzru, and this is another weird book. In it we follow Carter and Seth in New York, who are young guys that really like music. One of them is really good with music. He becomes kind of a sound engineer. He records sounds in the streets, and then in the studio that they buy together, he puts the sounds together to make music, and he's just really good at that. And the other one just is really into music and collecting discs, so you know, this. And he has a lot of money, so he's the one who buys the studio, and his friend is just kind of working for him, but they're together, you know. I mean, not together like they're not involved, they're just friends, but they live together, and one of them is broke and the other is rich, and they're pretty unlikable, but it's typically the kind of characters that I love, so it was just really great for that. But basically the story revolves around them because so in the studio they make one song, and when they listen to it they hear this man singing that they don't remember hearing, and they start wanting to know where this man comes from, and so they ask a lot of people, and it becomes more and more mysterious. Most people don't know where this guy comes from. Some know, but they're telling them not to keep searching because they won't be happy with what they find, and it's just so weird, and there are a lot of things that go from there. It becomes a horror book, basically. Lots of horrific things happen, and some that are very confusing and weird, and just, it's a wild ride, you know. And I listened to this one actually on audiobook as well, and I think the audiobook was great, first because the narrator was great, but also because you could hear the bits of songs in there, and also you had one of the guys that was trying to sleep with the sister of the other. Just lots of stupid stuff, but it's really fun, I thought, and just weird. Yeah, just like Glamour Emma, you know, just weird books that I thought were great. Now, getting into the top 3, my third favorite book in 2019 was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Again, a book that I listened to an audiobook because it's narrated by Susie Jackson, which is one of the best narrators I have ever listened to. She's just amazing, and it's just perfect for the story to be an audiobook because in it we follow Spencer, who wants to become a pilot like her dad. Her dad was actually killed in this big battle against aliens that they're fighting because he turned against his camp, so he was shot down. That's all she knows, but she's always been convinced that he's not a traitor like everyone says. But obviously this has put a toll on her family. They were forced to take the shame for him because he was dead, obviously, and so she has always wanted to become a pilot, and they are looking for pilots, a lot of them, because they need to fight the aliens, but the Crow, as they call them, actually, the aliens, and but she manages to get into flight school, as you see in the book, pretty early, but that's not the end of the story, obviously, because she has a lot more to overcome in the book, and she makes a lot of friends in flight school, which is really nice, and she does a lot of flying, which is really intense and exciting, and that's what I loved about the audiobook. Like, you could really feel how intense it was and imagine yourself with her flying, and that was just so amazing. I did not want to put it down. It was amazing. And the second book also came out in November, and I loved it just as much. It followed on from the first book, obviously, and it showed us even more of the world in there. And also, one thing that I forgot to mention is how amazing the world building was in this series. I've heard that Brandon Sanderson's world building is amazing, and I would totally agree from these two books. They were just so well done. Like, he gives you just enough information, but not too much that you are drowned by it. So, I don't know, it's amazing, and the audiobooks are just great. So that's why I haven't bought the books, although they are very pretty. I just enjoy the audiobooks so much, and yeah, just great. On the second spot, I have The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon, but I also reread all the series, the Pontine series in 2019, so I have the Bone season right here. I ordered the Mime Order in the same edition, but I'm still waiting for it. Because I actually want all the books in this edition, but they don't exist anymore, especially the third book, so I'm kind of sad. But this one is signed, and I'm really happy for that. But yeah, I reread this one in 2019, and I continued on with the other books. And the second one I'd say was my favorite, though all of them I loved. But this one is a bit harder to get into just because the world building is hard, it's not the best. In it, I actually felt that in my reread and the first time I read it, so that makes sense. But in it, in the Pontine series, we follow Paige, who is originally from Ireland, but now she lives in London, in London, and she is a dreamwalker. So she's voyant. So in this world, we have normal people like us, humans, and that are called non-voyants, and you have people who have special powers, so voyants. And she is a dreamwalker, one of the strongest voyants. You have 7 orders of voyants, and she is of the highest order, so she's one of the strongest. She is part of this kind of mob style group in one of the boroughs of London, and she is the right hand woman of Jackson, who is the one who rules her part of London. And in the first book, she gets taken by the police of Sion to this place that looks a lot like Oxford, and that she cannot get out of. And so throughout all of the book, she's trying to get out, and she's taken there. So in this fortress, she is there with other voyants, but also with some creatures that are extremely tall and don't seem human. And so this series is fantasy, but also dystopian, because they live inside London. Everyone is watched because they're trying to eradicate voyants, and it's just so inventive, and so this one is just so intricate, and that's why I struggle to explain it. It's just every book also is different from the other. So this one is all about where she's taken and how she tries to get out. The second book is her, well, I won't spoil you, but it's different, it's more in the city. And the third book takes place somewhere else, and some other things happen. They're all very different, but they still have something going for them. And the second book was my favorite because the only thing that I didn't like about the first one, besides the world building, was the romance, because I didn't think it was needed. But in the second one, it started making sense, and that's the difference that I loved about the second one, and it continued in the third one. And also, the second one is the longest. It's almost 500 pages, whereas the third one is much shorter, and I was kind of sad for that, because though enough things happen and you don't really have some things that are left unresolved, I wanted more things to happen like in the second one, so I was a bit disappointed for that because of that. But other than that, they're just all so great, and I would highly recommend this series. It's a great one, and I cannot wait for the fourth book in 2020. And last is my favorite book of 2019, and it is Middlegame by Shannon Maguire. This is an urban fantasy story about Roger and Dodger, two twins, but they don't know they're twins originally, though they look alike, that who are separated at birth and are not exactly human. They were created by this alchemist to become gods, kind of. And so we follow them from their birth to them being adults and when they're supposed to become gods and ascend. And so Roger is the one that has the words, so he's very into English, reading books, and just he always wants to put words onto things, whereas Dodger is the math kid. She's very logical. She wants to put numbers on things instead of words, and so they complete each other. And from when they're kids to forever, basically, they can communicate together in their heads. And so they keep coming together, but also repulsing each other for some reasons. And what I love also about this story is that it's not told in a linear way, so you actually get the end of the story before the beginning, and there's a reason for that, but at first it does seem a bit confusing, and I was like, what is happening? Did I miss anything? But no, I did not miss anything. It all makes sense eventually why this is told in this way. And I don't know, I love this so much. It reminded me a lot of some books that I used to love when I was a kid, because I was really into all urban fantasies, and it was just very nostalgic for me to read those kind of books. But also I wish there were more books that talked about alchemy, because alchemy in fantasy I love because it's just so realistic. You know, because not so long ago in the 19th century, people still thought that alchemy was a science and not fantasy. So it feels more real than anything else. And I love that. That you can really imagine this happening, though I don't think it ever will. It's just, I like that for some reason. So yeah. Just another character-driven book with some plot that is really exciting. Apparently that's what I like, so if you have any recommendations of books like this, please tell me. Apparently I like being confused for most of the book, if it makes sense. Because I have read a lot of books that did make sense until the end. That's not good. But this actually does. So yeah. This is the last book I'm going to talk about. Please tell me if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, or what your favorite books were in 2019, as I would love to know. But that's all for me. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye. Dream I know, deep up my feelings feel